In this section, we are writing the equation in slope-intercept form, which means I need two things. What are those two things? Right. I mean, it's kind of in the name. Slope-intercept form would kind of assume that we need to know slope and the y-intercept. Now, given 2 points, which of those should we know how to find, considering that we have spent 3 sections learning how to do it? Right. How do we find slope of 2 points?
y2 minus y1 over x2.
All right. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. 2 main things that I am seeing here. Some people don't know the difference between their x and y values and are doing the x values on top and the y values on bottom. The other main thing I'm seeing, let's say I do this y value minus this y value. So that would be negative 3 minus 3. No. This would be negative 3 minus negative 3. Just because it's subtraction doesn't mean you get to now ignore the negative symbol. I am subtracting. Whether the question is negative numbers or positive numbers, it is subtraction between the two. Which means if I have minus a negative, that means we are really adding. So I had a lot of people missing this one because they were getting negative 6 on top because they subtracted a positive 3 instead of a negative 3. So make sure that you are careful with your negative symbols. On the bottom, I have 7 minus negative 5, or 7 plus 5 if we want to make it a little easier to look at. So, negative 3 plus 3 gives us 0. And 7 plus 5 gives us 12. Although really, I could care less what 7 plus 5 gives us, because 0 divided by anything is 0. So it doesn't matter whether 7 plus 5 is 12 or 20 or negative 18. It really wouldn't matter, because whatever it is, we're just going to divide 0 by it, which means we're going to get 0. This is an equation of a line that has a 0 slope. Now, the second part of that, there's 2 options. The textbook teaches it using point slope form. There's nothing wrong with using point slope form. Just understand that if you use point slope form, you have to change it into slope intercept form at the end. Now, my preference is to do it by finding the y-intercept. So, if I want to find the y-intercept, I need to look at the regular form for a slope-intercept equation. A slope-intercept equation looks like y equals mx plus b. If you haven't memorized that, you really need to. Where m is our...
It's not showing.
Oh, sorry, it does that sometimes. It'd be nice if you would reconnect. All right, there it comes. All right, so m here is our slope, and b is our... Now, so far, I only know one of those things. I know the slope is 0. So I can go ahead and replace my slope with 0. Now, here's the thing you need to understand about an equation. What does this equation, when we get it finished, what will it represent?
Slope and the y-intercept of
An equation represents, there we go. It's not just one point, it's an infinite number of points and they form a line, right? Linear equations. Every equation is a line, okay? Now, I don't know what my y-intercept of this line is, okay? But I do know that this point, 7, -3, is on that line. And I know that this point, -5, -3 is on that line, right? If I have points on the line, what are they to that line? How do they relate to that line? Or to that equation, I should say. Well, sort of. If I have a point and I say it is on this line, then what is true about that point and the linear equation? Thank you. All right. Any point on that line is a solution to the linear equation, right? So that means that this equation, which is unfinished right now, can be solved by plugging in this x and this y, or it can be solved by plugging in this x or this y, right? Now the reason why that's important is because I don't really know what this equation is in its entirety right now, right? I'm still missing the y-intercept. But I do know that if I plug in 7 as an x value and -3 as a y value, those two sides should be equal, right? Because that's a solution to the linear equation that I'm trying to write. So I'm going to do that. Y equals -3 equals the slope, which we know is 0, times x, which is 7 in this case, plus b. Everyone follow where I got that from? I just took this equation and I picked an x and y value that I know solves this equation, and I plugged them in. Y is -3, x is 7. Now, I have an equation that has one variable, which means I can solve it, right? And I can find out what b has to be in order for it to be true. So, I get 0 times 7 is 0, and 0 plus b is,
-3.
well, 0 plus b is b, right? So that means b has to equal -3. So my equation for my line, going back to y equals mx plus b, now I know what m is, though. M is 0. And I know what b is. B is -3. And of course that can be simplified because 0x, just, no, 1x is the same x. 0x is 0. So that just goes away, and I get my equation is y equals -3. All right, the second example that we had on your check for understanding was another finding the equation for the line, but this time the points that it's going through are 4, 4, and -8, 10. You're still going to start the same way. We always start by finding the slope. So change in y, so 4 minus 10, or 10 minus 4, whichever way you want to do it. I'm going to do 4 minus 10. And then change in x would be 4 minus -8, which of course means 4 plus 8. So I end up with -6 over 12. So this has a slope of -1/2. Now, remember that's only the first part of our equation though. Once I have my slope, then I can plug that into my standard form, y equals mx plus b. So I can replace the m with -1/2. And then to find out what b is, I can choose any x and y value that's a solution. So we have a nice simple one here because I have x is 4, y is 4. So that would be my preferred one to plug in. So I'm going to replace y with 4. And I'm going to replace x with 4. And so I get this. And now I can solve this for b. So 4 equals negative 1/2 times 4. Half of 4 is 2, and of course it's going to be negative 2 plus b. Now to find out what b is, I have to solve, so I need to get rid of the negative 2 by adding 2 to both sides. So 4 plus 2 gives me 6. On this side it goes away, so I get 6 equals b. So now I know that my slope is negative 1/2 and my y-intercept is 6. So my equation for my line looks like y equals the slope, negative 1/2 x, plus the y-intercept, 6. And this would be the equation for my line in slope-intercept form. So that gives you good examples on each of those. You can also watch the previous video. Keep in mind for the other ones, you're just looking for slope and y-intercept. So if it's a graph, find the y-intercept, then find the slope by looking at the rise and run between any 2 points on the graph, and then just simply plug into our standard y equals mx plus b form.